guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is a very special video to me because it is my daughter Anniston's labor and delivery / birth story. And even though she's 3.5 now, this video was requested, but I honestly thought that I would have forgotten things by now, but honestly I haven't. The whole experience is still very vivid in my mind because it was obviously a very special day for my husband and I, and I'm excited to share this story with you guys, so let's get started. To start off, I'll kind of start from the beginning because we were induced with her, and I hate to say this, but it was an elective induction, meaning that there was not really a medical necessity. And normally I'm not really for that. In the past, I kind of have felt like if you're inducing, really it should be a medical necessity and not just because of convenience. However, I said that, and then of course we ended up electively inducing labor, and I'll get into that. But as you guys may or may not know, I'm not from Iowa. I moved here at 9 months pregnant because my husband, his contract was done and he was going to also deploy. So we decided to go ahead and move back to Iowa a little bit early. And I was 9 months pregnant, and luckily I found midwives here who were willing to take me on. And luckily my pregnancy altogether was super easy. I was really blessed with a healthy pregnancy with no issues at all. And so honestly, I'm very thankful for that. And when it came down to, I want to say my 37th week of pregnancy, my husband got his training dates for his deployment. We knew when he would be leaving, but if you have husbands, spouses, children who deploy, you know that when they mobilize and they deploy, they generally will have some kind of training in the United States first before they just up and leave and go overseas. So he had a month-long training in another state. So really, when I got the date, I was like, holy cow, that is like the day after my due date. And I was like kind of freaked out because there obviously was no guarantee I was going to go into labor by my due date. And that's kind of when I started bending my morals a little bit. And my midwives kind of talked to me about induction. And I just really wasn't wanting to do that until I received those training dates. We thought it was going to be a few weeks after my due date, but unfortunately you can't really control it. So I kind of made a deal with the Lord and my midwife and my husband saying, you know, I really don't want to induce, but I'm willing to induce in my 39th week in the middle if my body was favorable for an induction. Meaning if I was already kind of dilated good on my own and I was already thinning out and I looked favorable in the physician's eyes, then I probably would go ahead and be okay with an induction. So come my 39th week appointment, I believe I was 39 weeks and 2 days at this appointment. My midwife said, you know, let's go ahead and check you and see how you're doing. The week before that, I believe I was only 2 centimeters dilated and about like barely thinned out. And I mean like barely. So that last week before my 39-week appointment, I walked and I walked and I walked and I walked and I ate pineapple like it was going out of style. I did the EPO, the evening primrose oil. I did everything that I could. I really just was like praying like, Lord, please let my body be favorable for an induction because I want to make sure that my husband's here for the deployment or here for the birth because his deployment was going to be a year long. So not only would he have missed the birth, he also would have missed her first year of life. And he was already going to miss the first year anyways. So I really wanted him to be there for the birth. And plus I was in a new state. I didn't know anyone hardly. All I knew were his family. I had I had one friend that I met in flight school, and that was it. And I was just beside myself. And on the day of my 32 or 39 week and 2 day appointment, I was 4 centimeters dilated and 75% effaced, and I could not believe it. I was like, what? Like, are you lying to me? Stop it. I was just so excited. And I was like, okay, you know, obviously this is meant to be, you know, let's do this. My body seems to be ready, you know, let's do it. And my husband, I think he was just bursting at the seams excited. He's kind of hard to read though. He's not really very like emotionally like open, but I could tell that he was obviously excited that he wouldn't miss anything, because honestly guys, if I had gone in there and I was still 2 centimeters and like fully just thick, I would not have induced labor. And that's just being honest. And I know that may kind of sound mean, but I've seen where people have done that and it kind of ends up in like scary emergency C-section situations sometimes. And that's like one of my biggest fears is, you know, I think I would feel bad later on if I induced knowing my body wasn't ready and then something were to happen. So I just wanted to make sure if I was going to bend my beliefs to induce, that I was at least favorable. And so the day I went in for my induction, I was 39 weeks and 4 days pregnant, and I was actually contracting that morning frequently. So I was feeling really good that maybe if I hadn't induced, I would have gone into labor that day or the next. Maybe, I don't really know. But we got to the hospital at 7:30 that morning, and it was still kind of cold. Here in Iowa, it was still cold. It was the morning of April 16th, 2016. And I just remember being ready. I remember being ready. I mean, I think any pregnancy, you feel like you're pregnant forever. And that's kind of how I felt. I was just ready to get her out and to meet her and for her to meet her dad before he had to leave. So I went into the hospital just completely just like, let's do this. So we got there at 7:30, and of course we had, you know, the initial IV ports put in, all the triage stuff that happens. Pretty much all the basics that went on. We got put into our room, and I changed into my hospital gown that a friend made for me that I absolutely loved. It was very girly. It was like a girly, florally type print. And I had spoken with this hospital earlier because I wanted to go I wanted to have a very free reign. I wanted to be able to walk as much as possible. I wanted to be in and out of the water. So they did have wireless monitors at this hospital, which is why we went with this hospital, because there was 2 major ones that we could have gone with. And I went with the hospital that more had that. They both were definitely into natural labor, but I felt like one hospital had more of a selection of different things that you could do and you could try, and the other hospital was more strict. So we definitely went with the one that we felt more comfortable with, which ironically is now the hospital that my husband works for. So it's kind of all worked out in the end. But so we decided, instead of just administering Pitocin right away, that we would actually have them break my water. And so at 8:50 in the morning, they broke my water and sent us on multiple laps around the hospital. And we walked and walked and walked some more and walked and walked. And the contractions actually really picked up on their own. And then after they kind of picked up on their own, I made the mistake of getting into the tub. And I knew I should have waited a little bit further into labor before I hopped in the tub, because sometimes the tub can really slow things down. And unfortunately, that's what happened. I was doing so good on my own, and then I got into the tub a little bit too early, and my body just the contractions pretty much evened out, and then they were pretty much gone. So at that point, we did start Pitocin, and we started Pitocin at 11:13. So let's see, that would have been into labor for about 2 hours on my own, and then they kind of bottomed out. And let me tell you guys, Pitocin is no joke. No joke. It's basically just feels like simulated contractions. Like there's no like build up, peak, and kind of let down. It's just pretty much straight up and then goes down. Straight up and it goes down. It's just very harsh and very sudden, and you don't really have time to catch your breath or prepare, because when you prepare for a natural birth, you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna start feeling the contraction rise and it's gonna fall and it's gonna be okay. Not with Pitocin, that's not the case. It shoots up and goes down. Very unlike real contractions, but obviously if you're getting induced, that's kind of what they go with most of the time. So from the start of Pitocin, a little after 11, when they started Pitocin, I was already 5 centimeters. So I did kind of progress on my own, the 1 centimeter over, the first few hours. But I kept laboring. I used the ball, I used the bar, I would sit in the tub, not completely submerged, of course, because I was not doing that again. The ball is what helped me the most, and I made the mistake of letting my husband leave and get something to eat because we forgot to kind of pack him anything. And then I assumed that when he left to eat, he would eat on the way back, but he waited until he got into the room to eat. And I thought that was just rude. But honestly, he didn't think about it. So I'm on the ball. At this point, I'm probably about 6-7 centimeters, and I'm just like staring at him, like eating his hamburger, and I'm like, you did this to me. So yeah, it was very intense, but the ball helped me immensely, just opening like the pelvis up and the legs. It was fantastic. It's by far the best tool that I've found that would help me during labor and, you know, contractions and Pitocin. So at 3:46, I was ready to push. So pretty much from the time that we started Pitocin, it was only about 3 hours and 45 minutes. And it was pretty intense the entire way through. I mean, I would be on the bed on all fours, I'd be on the ball, I would just kind of go back and forth. I whined and I cried, I'm not gonna lie. Obviously, you guys know birth is not easy. It hurts. It is awful. But it's all for, you know, you get the great gift at the end, of course. And I just remember thinking, wow, this went really fast, because I believe I was a 7 centimeters at about a little after 2:15, 2:30, and then I was already ready to go, completely dilated, ready to push at 3:45. So I definitely went really quickly, and I kind of attribute that to the hypnobirthing techniques, just kind of breathing through them and like welcoming the contractions into you. But guys, it was definitely very intense. And my husband's not really the best to like understand what he can do, because obviously when you're in pain, sometimes it makes you angry, sometimes it makes you're like, don't touch me. And if you're touching me, you're not doing it right, you know? So he just kind of like laid back and let me kind of handle it. And that's kind of how I preferred it, to be honest, because I knew that I had to just focus and kind of welcome them and, you know, move on so I could get to the end gift of my child. So we started pushing at 3:47, 3:48, like pretty soon after. It was very kind of quick, because my midwife had come in and out. Like with doctors, they pretty much come in like once or twice during most of your labor. The midwife was in and out like every half hour. So it was absolutely fantastic. And she was just so supportive. If I was having a contraction, she was gonna stand there and help me through it, because I did not have a doula or anything. I just pretty much had myself and my husband. So, but I pushed for 15 minutes, or 15 to 17 minutes, and at 4:06, Anniston was born. But to back up in that window, this is kind of where things got really scary. And I can almost get emotional thinking about it now, but I'm gonna like try not to do that. But everything, the entire pregnancy, the entire labor went fine. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. I could not have, you know, asked for anything else, and I'm so grateful for everything, and especially leading up to that point. Like I said, I only pushed for about 15 to 17 minutes. However, it probably would have gone a lot faster if this hadn't have happened, and I'll go ahead and talk about it. But basically what happened is called shoulder dystocia. During the time that I was pushing, I had them put a mirror down there, because for me it really helped see what was going on. I saw what was working and what was not working. And after about 3 to 4 pushes, 3 to 4 contractions, I wasn't really seeing any kind of a difference, and I didn't know if that was normal or not, because they were just like, okay, we'll just keep counting to 10. And I didn't feel like I saw her coming enough. And so I want to say about 10 minutes into it, 10 minutes into pushing, when Anniston was coming out, she was coming out with her head up like this, you know, oh, so dramatic, but like this. And the midwife's like, hold on, you know, that this isn't gonna work. You know, they obviously can't come out like this. And I'm not exactly sure in that moment what happened the next 30 seconds, but all I remember is there was some beeping on the monitors, and I don't know if it's because they lost a heart rate or something. I'm not really sure what happened, but when that went off, the nurse ran to the wall, pressed the button on the wall, and said, we have code something in this room. And I'm telling you, a SWAT team swarmed my entire room. My husband was over here. He was swept away by a nurse. My other nurse, who'd been my delivery nurse for the entire time, jumped on the bed, and her butt was in my face, and she was like straddled over my body, and she was pushing my stomach, down as the midwife was like, I have to move her arm. I have to kind of get this down. And a actual doctor came into the room, and followed by more techs. And I was just like, I could not believe how fast, for one, everyone got in there. I was like, holy cow. They didn't move the mirror. And so as I'm trying to lean over, I kind of see, and I'm just like, the horror in the nurse's face was crazy. The doctor kind of pushed my midwife out of the way, and he was like, we're gonna have to have a C-section. We need to push her back in there and go out. My midwife was like telling me, she was like, Anna, it's gonna be okay. We need you to push. So the doctor ended up somehow putting his arm in and kind of moving her hand down and like jerking her. And then in like a minute or so after that, she was born. They just kept telling me to push. And at the time, my husband was not beside me. I was really overwhelmed, and I'm like, God, please get her out. Please don't let her, you know, don't let anything happen to her, you know, where she's right there. And it just wasn't something that you could plan. You couldn't expect it. And after I say about 3 to 4 minutes of everyone being in there and all this happening, it just happened so fast. The nurse and the doctor combined were able to get her out. And they held her up, and she just started peeing, which was great. And they pretty much still allowed me to do the delayed cord clamping and later on me for a second. And I just sat there and stared at her, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But after they did the delayed cord clamping and they cut it, they pretty much swept her away, and we couldn't skin to skin right away, which about killed me. But they obviously needed to check her out, because they originally thought, when they were checking her, my midwife said, you know, we have to check her shoulder. A lot of times when this happens, they actually can damage nerves, and they could either not get movement right away, or they could actually be paralyzed, I believe is what she told me. And so then of course I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, is she okay? Is she moving? Can she move her arm? And after about 5 minutes, she was good. They checked her out and she was fine. They brought her back to me to skin, and I was just like overwhelmed with emotion, because it was scary. And in that moment, no one was really telling me anything. They're just like, you have to push, you have to push. And the doctor was freaking out, and the midwife was trying to keep me calm. And the nurse was just on top of me. Like, she was just all on top of me. And I get that that's what they have to do, and that's probably their protocol, but it was very overwhelming, and I'm just so thankful to the team that they were able to get her out. And oh my gosh, I just could not believe that would even like really happen, because it's just definitely, I never even considered that to be an option. I mean, obviously I've never had a child with shoulder dystocia, so I didn't know what that was. And pretty much, yeah, I mean, she just came out like this, and obviously you can't really birth like that. And they could also, and obviously it could cause damage to their shoulders. So my husband was able to come back over to me, and I was like, where did you go? Like, what happened? He's like, they just swept me away. And we did videotape it. Unfortunately, I'm not really sure what happened with the videotape. I don't know if it got moisture in it or something, but we actually lost like the entire last half of it. So right when things kind of got scary and I was like pushing, we lost everything. So I would have been more than willing to share that with you guys, but unfortunately we don't have the footage, and it really breaks my heart that we don't have it. But maybe it's for the best. I don't really want to relive that moment. But she was born, she was 7 pounds, 2 ounces, and she was 20 inches long. I had to look down because I couldn't remember if she was 20 or 21 inches. But yep, 7 pounds, 2 ounces, and 20 inches long. And she was just absolutely amazing. I could not even in my mind picture what she was going to look like. I thought she was going to be bald for one thing, because I didn't even have any heartburn. And I know that's just an old wives' tale, but a lot of my friends who've had it have had kids with lots of hair. And she came out with dark hair, dark like this color hair, but like, you know, little short hairs. And she was fantastic. She started eating right away. And I was just like absolutely in love with her. So altogether, from me going into the hospital, as soon as my water broke, almost at 9 o'clock, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. She was born 7 hours and some odd minutes later. So overall, it was a really good experience. I mean, obviously, from what they told me, I might be at a higher risk to have shoulder dystocia with the next child, which pretty much depletes my chances of ever having a home birth. I would have loved to have a home birth. My midwife said she highly would not recommend that. So that does kind of hurt me a little bit, but obviously I care more about the safety of my next pregnancy and next child, that I wouldn't opt to do that. But yeah, it was super easy after we had her. She pretty much stayed in the room with us the entire time, only left when she absolutely had to. Had her first bath like way late that night, like super late in the night. And then we went home like 24 hours later, and it was fantastic. And I'm just so grateful that we were able to have her while he was still here, because he did leave when she was, he left almost right away a few days later. He actually had to leave when she was a few hours old to go fly, to get current in one of the aircraft, and then he actually came back. That was awful. But he left a few days later, and then we actually got to go see him right before he left, a month after that, when they were transitioning from that military post to overseas. And then he came back after she had already turned 1 a few weeks prior. So I am very grateful that we were able to have her, and it does kind of change my mind about inductions now. Obviously, there are certain cases where if you have to do it electively, you just have to, or you risk the child not being able to meet their parent. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you're not subscribed to my channel, we currently are trying to conceive our second child together, and we are on kind of a little bit of an infertility journey right now. And I would love to have you guys join me. I would love to hear if you guys had a child and had the shoulder dystocia, and if you had it with your next child, if you had another child after that. I would like to also hear just your experiences in general with shoulder dystocia, and was your child okay afterwards? Let me know in the comments, because I've never met anyone that it's happened to, although I hear it's very common. Anyone that I know that I've talked to about it, they said it didn't happen to them. They don't know really what that was. So I would love to talk to anyone who has had it and can tell me their experience with it, because I am anxious to know if it would happen again, because it is something I would need to like mentally prepare myself for, because it is quite scary. But thank you guys so much for watching my channel. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.